Ruaa, it is literally wonderful to have you here on our first ever Not Quite a podcast. So what we are trying to do is open up conversations around how people change, how people think about change. And I think you and your world is fascinating. And we want to start with you more to shift the conversation. So we want to see how our personal life bleeds with our work life, how one affects the other, how our head and heart sort of interplays. So it's absolutely cracking to have you here. For everybody else, Ruaa is a marketer and a photographer, but we're not really here to talk about that. We're not going to focus on that. But what I want us to know and what I want us to hear is about your adventure. So your start of life and how you got here is something that most of us probably couldn't fathom, let alone experience. So tell us about your change journey. Tell us about you.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's absolutely surreal being here. My life has literally been a series of changes. So, ever since I was born, it was just one change from the next. I was born in the Middle East, and at the tender age of 6 months, me and the family, we moved to Brazil. And then we lived there for about 3.5 years. I went to nursery school in Brazil. Was a little Brazilian kid, spoke the language, knew all the nursery rhymes. And then we moved yet again, after 3.5 years to Spain, Madrid. And notice that every single of those countries, I was in a capital city as well, which sort of adds to the intensity. I went from one capital city to the next. And so again, in Madrid in Spain, I was there for about 3.5 years. And I went to primary school there. I really immersed myself into the culture. I performed flamenco on stage. And obviously I, got to know the culture. I really immersed myself in the culture. I spoke the language fluently. And it was, I think, the best years of my life in Spain. I absolutely loved living in Spain and growing up in Spain. And then 3.5 years later, yet again, I moved to Saudi Arabia for 1.5 years. So there, it was a short stint, but it was kind of like sort of primary to middle school. And that's where really my Arabic skills really switched on. I wasn't really a good Arabic sort of speaker. And then I really grew fluent in the sort of how you sort of see the Queen's English, sort of the proper sort of spoken word Arabic, the Arabic that you see in the news, not the actual sort of spoken dialect Arabic that you see like in the streets or that you hear in the streets. So I got to really hone those Arabic skills or the Arabic language skills down. And then when I was 8, we moved to London. So it was just such a huge journey. And then we actually stayed in London from then on, from the age of 8. And I did live most of my life in London. I grew up in London. So, yeah.
And here you are in Swinton, of all places.
Absolutely. I mean, the thing is, it's funny because even in the UK, I moved a lot. So I moved to so many places within the UK, and I relocated back in 2020 to Manchester. So change is very, very familiar to me. Like my life is just it's always been evolving, it's always been changing. Hence, it's always accompanied me. But yeah, and now I'm in Swinton, as you say.
And I'm trying absolutely to not get distracted by the flamenco, because that could lead us to a completely different type of conversation. But you've seen multiple cultures, you've got multiple languages under your belt, you've got that lived experience. But some of those decisions, the decisions to move won't necessarily have been your decision. And some of the decisions, if you've got older, will start to be your decision, where you have more agency and the ability to influence what those are. How do you think that changed your mindset? So when you think about the changes you face into now, what does that earlier years of I suppose, uncontrolled change, does that affect you? Does it make you think or do differently?
So I think for me, it's really helped cultivate a mindset of growth and flexibility and open-mindedness. And I think these are all life skills. And that's really the crux of what change really brings about to someone's life. It's just the fact that you live a more richer, more in-depth life when you embrace change. and when you really jump into it, no one can really force change on you. No one can really make you sort of jump out of the sofa and actually change. You have to also change yourself. I've been on both sides. I've had change forced on me by life circumstances or by the universe, let's say. And I've also had I've also actually had to instigate or trigger change within myself. So I think it just cultivated a mindset of growth, which I feel it's so important to just live a fulfilled life. At least that's true for me. It might not be for everyone. I can appreciate and understand that stability and fixedness is really comforting for a lot of people, and there is some truth to that. I'm not going to deny that. I think I think you can still be grounded and also accept change and move into change. And for me, I just feel that it's more about evolving.
Nice. And I think like when we look at organizational change, so when a business or an organization decides to change, we try and get them to find anchors, so moments of stability to help their people move through and find their way with a bit more agency than what we would do if we said, everybody left.
Mm-hmm.
When you think about your personal changes and when you make those decisions, do you give yourself things that are stable, or do you just go whole into changing all of the things all at once? How do you balance that need for safe and sanctuary versus that need for growth?
Yeah, I think for me personally, if you're going to go into change, for me personally, what I found really useful is to be stable from within. So you have to really take care of yourself within your soul, within your heart, within your mind. You can't go into potential chaos or potential terrain that you don't know when you yourself are in chaos, when you yourself are just absolutely not stable or unstable ground.
Yeah.
I think again, it's a life skill. I think some people need to have certain tools in order for them to have that inner stability and inner knowingness. I think when you really know yourself, I think the first thing is really to just know yourself, discover yourself as much as possible, because it's from there that you're going to build a very solid foundation so that you can actually face changes head on and not be scared of them and evolve from there. I think it all starts from within. It really does.
Amazing. I think that I'm sort of second guessing some of the responses that this conversation will have, because lots of people that engage with this content will have these questions. Will be going through an organizational change that they don't control, they don't decide,
Yeah.
they can't necessarily influence, and they are being either asked to think or do differently, or being asked to change, or having something taken away that they don't want to let go of. So without trying to second guess some of the responses from this podcast, I know a lot of our audience and a lot of the questions that we get given is very much around changes that are being forced upon people, where they come from an organisation, not from themselves, where they are being asked or told to do differently. What learning or experiences from, I suppose, what I would call your heart-led change, could you try and influence, shape, or apply into what would be a head-led change? What do you think can transfer? What would you offer to somebody going through that type of change?
I think for me, what's really, really helped is, and one of the things that I do often is contemplation. I contemplate a lot. It's not overthinking, it's more contemplation. It's really understanding what my needs are. What do I need out of the situation? If change has been forced upon me, like for example, a managerial change or some sort of change in my external environment that hasn't really gone to plan, I need to go away and contemplate and think to myself, right, okay, how is it going to affect me? What do I really need? What do I really want? But I think the most important thing as well, there has to be some sort of diplomacy and some sort of communication after that. There has to be some sort of action. So when you do go to communicate to, for example, say the managers, then you can say, I need this, or I feel in the circumstances that I'm in right now, and with the changes that are going to be falling upon us gradually or eventually, it would be beneficial for this and this. So it's about communication, about contemplation, about really understanding yourself, and from there you communicate what you need to communicate.
Amazing. So I think like when people are asked to change, when changes happen, it's so easy for people to either run into them really quickly because they feel like they should, or to run away from them. So we brains have fight or flight as a mechanism, and without sort of going into a neuroscience monologue, that ability to know when you're responding in that way, and being able to use the contemplation as a technique, but then being able to enact it by seeking answers or seeking progress that aligns to those outcomes and those needs feels nice.
Yeah, and I think this whole sort of heart-led, mind-led, I totally respect that, but I think there's other mechanisms within you that you can also be listening to. So for example, gut-led, what is your gut telling you? How is your body responding? Your intuition, what's your intuition telling you? What's your emotions? What are your thing is, because everyone's biochemistry is so different. For example, for me, what I've discovered in the last 6 months, for example, is that I'm a gut person. So if it actually doesn't feel right in my body, if it doesn't feel good, then I need to listen to that and then respond accordingly. That is my strategy. So, and it's different for everyone. I have friends who are emotionally led. They listen to their emotions. How does something make them feel? And then from that, they respond accordingly. Some people are more splenic. They're more from the intuition side of things. It's how they intuitively feel, how they intuitively gauge something. It's more sort of spirit led.
Yeah, nice. So it's finding where the messages are coming from, and listening to them and responding to them in a way that is true to where you are. Somatic exercises, and the concepts of somatics, where it's like it's full body responses. I always use the example of when you get nervous before you go and do a run, and you always get a nervous wee. That's your body trying to calm you down and to tell you that it's going to be okay, and to trying to flush you through to support you. But we say it's nerves.
Yeah.
It's a physical response to the environment that you're in. So
and
I think more people honing into that space and using full body responses to how they're feeling is an amazing dial shift in mindset and responses.
Yeah, and just to sort of carry on from your point about whether to actually accept or not accept the change, or go into it or not to the change, not all change is for us, and some change is for us but we don't want it, and some change we want to do but it's not for us. So that's a very interesting nuance that I think an individual can really benefit from. What changes are being forced on me that are actually for me and that are not for me, and how to gauge. And it's about having, again, relying on that contemplation, and then your individual unique response, whether it's gut, heart, mind, splenic, intuition led, whatever it is. I think that's something that's worthwhile bearing in mind.
Amazing. Oh, thank you so much, Ruaa. That's a full-bodied response to how we change and how we engage with change. Thank you for being with us today. It's absolutely cracking to have you. We're going to pause our Not Quite a Podcast now, and me and Ruaa are going to talk about flamenco. So thank you for joining us for this session, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you for having me.